Wow, he jacked up that car. That's why I went around over here. So I went around. It's more extensive than I thought it was.
Yeah, it is.
Hold me now. For me to say I'm sorry. I just want you. And all that we've been through, I will make it up to you. Oh, those are different ones. Okay.
Huh.
So is there...
We're done.
Well, there was another side. I thought maybe they connected a big old circle, but I'm not sure they do. There's the mailboxes. Entryway there, shit.
It's only 8 mailboxes for that area. There's more for this one.
Yes, that's not what I'm saying.
That's
I said
really
between the two is a little small space. Oh, excuse me. Time for me to say I'm sorry. I just want you to know. And I really want to tell you I'm sorry. No, I don't think there's a way through there. Let me get up to here. Oh, duckies.
Awesome, George.
Just above. So did you want to go to Fridays or not?
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
No, no.
Wow.
Kind of want to go on the other side and see what they got.
That's really cool. So,
Yeah, pull the thread.
we're like right here, and that's where Devon's area is.
Oh.
5 minutes away.